Hello everyone, a very good afternoon. We are going into the next session and this would be chaired by Dr. Kishore Kumar Tripathi, Member Secretary, Audubhuti, Puducherry, and we have two speakers. One is Dr. Anuradha Chaudhuri, who will be speaking online, and the other one is Dr. Nandini Gangopadhyay, who is probably present here. So, as the online speaker is not present, I will ask the chairperson if he will give permission to Dr. Nandini Gangopadhyay to speak first. So over to you, sir, over to the chairperson, Dr. Kishore Kumar Tripathi.
Namaste from the land of the holy ashram of Sri Aurobindo. It is indeed a matter of great pleasure for me to know that the Kolkata Society for Asian Studies, in collaboration with Maulana Abul Kalam Azad Institute for Asian Studies and Anthropological Survey of India, is organizing this beautiful conference, relevance of the universal mission of the Bengali Renaissance for a sustainable future for India and the world. I am very much grateful to the organizing committee for giving me the chance to speak, to be part of this program. So I request Madam Nandini Gangopadhyay ji, who is the former Assistant Professor of Geography, Azad Hind Fauj Smriti Mahavidyalaya, and she will speak on Sri Aurobindo, his integral yoga and its national and international influence. Ma'am, you may please proceed with your presentations.
Good afternoon, sir. Good afternoon, Professor Tripathi. Good afternoon to everyone present here. With your permission, should I start?
Yes, with permission.
Right. Sir, should I start?
Yeah, please.
Okay. So basically, my topic is Sri Aurobindo Ashram, his integral yoga, and its national and international influence. This is a paper which has been co-authored by my supervisor as well, Dr. Premanshu Chakraborty. So I would like to introduce. So religious institutions have continued to play an important and sometimes indispensable role in our society. Sri Aurobindo Ashram, situated at Puducherry, the capital of the Union Territory bearing the same name, is one such multidimensional institution which has an immense impact in the town of its situation. Sri Aurobindo Ashram Puducherry has attracted the attention of innumerable minds, saints, philosophers, leaders, pilgrims, visitors, and commoners in various ways. It is a spiritual community where all regions of India and many countries of Europe, Asia, and America are represented based on the concept that all life is yoga and that there is no human activity which cannot be made into a field for spiritual growth and which cannot be effectively influenced through one's inner discipline. The ashram became a very dynamic institution spread throughout and integrated with the larger city of Puducherry in which it is situated. Literature surveys done also point out that Aurobindo Ashram and Auroville, its sister organization, has definitely left an indelible mark on Puducherry and its surrounding villages. So going to the second slide here. We all know about Sri Aurobindo. So I mean, we all know about the impact he had on our political struggles and his spiritual contribution as well. So just a brief idea, very brief idea. He was born as Aurobindo Ghosh, completed his education in England, and after a brief but effective stint in Indian politics came to Puducherry in 1910. With his spiritual collaborator, whom we shall see in the next slide, Mira Alfasa, better known as the mother, Sri Aurobindo developed a method of spiritual practice which he called integral yoga. The central theme of his vision was the evolution of human life into a life divine. Life divine, incidentally, was his magnum opus. Along with that, he also wrote Synthesis of Yoga, Savitri, a Legend and a Symbol, all of which deals with theoretical aspects and practical guidance into integral yoga. So next we have the mother, or Mira Alfasa. Mira Alfasa was Sri Aurobindo's prime spiritual collaborator who came from France and joined Sri Aurobindo in 1914. Both of them laid the foundation and took up the task of building a new world. She is the primary force behind establishment of Sri Aurobindo Ashram and Auroville later on. So, spiritual Renaissance, integral yoga and Sri Aurobindo Ashram. Integral yoga is of primary focus in today's paper, so we shall focus on that. So, influenced by Bankim's Anandamath and inspired by a Maharashtrian yogi, Vishnu Bhaskar Lele, whom Sri Aurobindo met in Baroda. Because he had, after coming from UK, he first went on to join Maharaja of Baroda's services as an attaché in the settlement department. There he met Vishnu Bhaskar Lele. And under his guidance, he had his first spiritual experience, which he describes as a state of a total mental calm. That is where he first got his spiritual experience. Later on, his spiritual, we all know about his, like 1 year imprisonment in Alipur jail. That carried on in Alipur jail, where he very beautifully describes in the book Kara Kahini, which is written in Bengali by Sri Aurobindo himself. He had seen Vasudeva in everywhere. I mean, he had seen Vasudeva in the trees, in the prison walls, in the jailer, in the judge who was presiding over his case. Everywhere he could see Krishna or Vasudeva. That was his second realization. After his release, his well-wishers, fearing his arrest in British India, moved him to French Puducherry, where he arrived on April 4th, 1910. And his spiritual journey henceforth was ably supported by the mother. He left his disciples, or rather not his disciples at the point of time, his compatriots who had all come from Bengal, who were a part of his political journey. He left them in the hands of the mother, and he went into a spiritual seclusion of 25 years. It was not totally seclusion. He did meet people, but he did not go out of the room in which he was meditating or carrying on his spiritual journey. So, being the geographer that we are, we cannot but help include maps in our presentation. So, henceforth, we have Puducherry, which is a part of Tamil Nadu, and Puducherry, which is actually a set of discrete units. Together, it is called the territory of Puducherry. What are the main objectives of study here? So, to study the influence of Sri Aurobindo's integral yoga nationally and internationally. And the second objective is to examine the impact of the Aurobindonian philosophy of integral yoga on the community life of Auroville. We shall come to Auroville as a settlement later on. So, what is the methodology that we used? We used digital cartography supported by GIS. It has been used for site, situation and land use maps made on Auroville as well as Pondicherry. Questionnaire surveys have also been undertaken involving the practitioners of integral yoga and Sri Aurobindo Ashram in Auroville. After analyzing the results, interviews were conducted both online and offline, sampling 20% of the respondents of the questionnaire survey about the influence of the philosophy of Sri Aurobindo on the local geographical area. Structured interviews while visiting various institutions linked to Sri Aurobindo in Puducherry and also outside Puducherry was conducted, and several offices and institutions in the hinterland was also visited. literature review with triangulation of qualitative and quantitative methods leading to the findings and contribution of Sri Aurobindo related to the Bengal Renaissance has also been done, which has not been highlighted previously. So, dealing with the first objective, which is to evaluate the contribution of Sri Aurobindo in ensuring the sustainable future of humanity. Now, a brief idea about Sri Aurobindo Ashram. This is a spiritual community. We cannot call it a religious one. It's a spiritual community established by Sri Aurobindo and the mother at Puducherry on 24th November 1926 with only 24 inmates. The ashram is not a religious, social, educational or political organization. It's a community of spiritual seekers with a difference. The ashram has nothing to do with asceticism, monasticism. On the contrary, it includes life in yoga. It's very much a dynamic institution. The master, as he is known to the ashramites, had famously said that all life is yoga. As you can see, the residents of the Sri Aurobindo Ashram 1922 to 2018 is steadily increasing. It's 1973 till present. It's 2000 plus at the moment. If anyone by any chance has visited Puducherry, you would see the dining hall. The residents and visitors eat together. So it's over 2000. It's just over 2,400 approximately at the present. So what are the activities in the ashram? Ashram is a dynamic institution. It has over 80 departments, which include farms, gardens, healthcare, guest houses, engineering units, among many others. And all of this is located not only in Puducherry, it's also located partly in Tamil Nadu. All the workers are paid the market rates in the respective jobs. They also have provident fund, gratuity, and different other things. So you can well have an idea about how big and how dynamic the institution is, and therefore comprehend the kind of impact it will have on Puducherry and its surrounding areas. So now we are moving to Aurobindo's spiritual life. So this is the integral yoga of Sri Aurobindo. Now, we all know about yoga. We have some idea about what yoga is. In our day-to-day life, we sometimes mention it. And those of you all who know about Sri Aurobindo would know about something, maybe something about integral yoga. So what is integral yoga and how is it different from the yoga that we know? The yoga of Gita, the yoga of, the traditional yoga that we know. So the yoga of Sri Aurobindo is also known as integral yoga. It's a yoga of earth transformation. The aim of this yoga is not an escape from life or shunning of worldly existence, but a radical change in our life while we are living on this earth. Traditional yoga views life as either an illusion or an existence full of pain, suffering, and evil. The only way out of this dismal state of affairs is to find an exit door as a means to quit the game of creation, the cycle of birth and rebirth, and be done away with it. So basically, in this traditional yoga, techniques are given to liberate oneself from creation, or rather Maya, and the law of karma, until we are able to break through this cycle through our karma and completely distance ourselves from attachments or Maya. We cannot achieve divine life. This is as per traditional yoga. Now, what did Sri Aurobindo say? Sri Aurobindo, who had all the major experiences and realizations of traditional yoga, was of the opinion that divine life is perfectly possible on earth itself, and in our present life, marred with limitation, ignorance, suffering, and evil, that can be changed into a beautiful diviner living. Sri Aurobindo and his spiritual collaborator, the mother, found the way to realize this age-old dream of humanity, of making, what is the age-old dream of humanity? Making earth and heaven as one, having divine life, experiencing divine life on earth. So he was able to do this through his philosophy of integral yoga. As you can see from the slide, Sri Aurobindo's integral yoga is basically a synthesis of various yoga forms of Sankhya, Karma, Jnana, Bhakti, Yoga as described in the Bhagavad Gita. It can also be considered as a synthesis between Vedanta and Tantra and the Western and Eastern methods of spirituality. Of all the forms of yoga, I would like to mention one thing, that Sri Aurobindo stressed on Karma Yoga the most. Why? Because he believed in yoga through action. It's the most difficult of all the yogas, because you are staying amidst all people, like amidst your friends, your family, yet you are spiritually detached and you're focusing on whatever you're doing and you're offering that to the divine. It's very difficult. It's not, it's not just distancing yourself from society, going to the hills and meditating and doing something like that. Karma yoga, staying amidst society, within people, human people, involving yourself in action and yet trying to achieve that divine life on earth, doing everything for the divine, doing, what they say in Sri Aurobindo Ashram is that when you're working as if the mother and Sri Aurobindo is watching you work accordingly. So that is the kind of karma yoga that Sri Aurobindo talked about, and that is what his integral yoga is all about. So what about integral yoga, its zones of influence? That is the first objective that we have. So integral yoga, its zones of influence, national and international. Now this is a unique concept, right? Because you're talking about bringing divinity back on earth. It's unique in its own way. It's not that you have to become a monk, detach yourself from society and go on your own way. So it's unique. Since its inception in 1926, Sri Aurobindo Ashram had made its presence felt all over India and abroad. Gujarat and West Bengal have high number of centers, as both places are associated with the ashram founder, Sri Aurobindo, professionally and politically. Professionally, he was in Gujarat for quite some time, and he had quite a large number of followers in Gujarat, and I'm sure Professor Tripathi would agree that we have Gujarati devotees in the ashram as well, to a great extent, along with Bengali devotees. However, other states like Madhya Pradesh, Andhra Pradesh and Orissa with a high number of centers indicates that this institution has definitely proved itself as one of national repute. Because once Sri Aurobindo was inside, since 1926, when he stepped into that room where he lived for 25 years, he never stepped outside. He never went on preaching about his philosophy of integral yoga all over India or even the world. He never did that. He just stayed there, and then he, left his earthly body from there itself. So he never went out anywhere. So this is also very interesting to note that without any kind of preaching or should I say without any kind of evangelical motive, ashram and its integral yoga had spread through all these states. Internationally, Sri Aurobindo's brand of neo-Hinduism caught on in the West during the 60s and the 70s. We must remember that during that time, counterculture movement was sweeping across the Western world, especially USA and Europe. And that is a reason perhaps why we can attribute to that we have centers of integral yoga in North America, large amount, quite a few centers. Here too, surprisingly, other than France, the birthplace of Mira Alfasa, centers have sprung up in almost all the Western European nations, with significant presence in Germany, Netherlands and Spain. So here we have a map of the zone of influence of Sri Aurobindo Ashram. If you can look, we have the high influence, that's more than 40 centers. We've colored it in deep blue, and the color diminishes, intensity of the color accordingly as per the index is concerned. Please note that in 2014, Orissa has a total of 588 centers, which includes 599 educational centers, followed by West Bengal and Gujarat. The state with the highest growth in terms of centers is Orissa, wherein Sri Aurobindo Ashram is involved in a large number of development activities on the grassroots level. This society, Sri Aurobindo Society, was set up by Mira Alfasa, better known as the mother, which has branches in 61 countries and 600 branches in India. We can see that the Sri Aurobindo Society, which is registered as a society in Kolkata with its headquarters in Puducherry under the Societies Registration Act, has a huge, it's got a wide array of activities, Oro Publications, Oro Service, Sri Aurobindo Institute for Science and Technology. It has its finger in every pie. And Sarvam is something very important. Sarvam is actually Sri Aurobindo Rural and Village Action Movement, which has a lot of influence in Puducherry and surrounding areas. It's done amazing work over there. So international presence of Sri Aurobindo Ashram. Here again, you can look at the map and see that Canada and United States, again awash with counterculture movements, when people were trying to find a different alternative to their, at the time, different alternative to their, belief system, which was Christianity. They found this and they welcomed it. Okay, so Canada and United States of America, we have a lot of centers. And then we have Russian Federation, Sweden, United Kingdom, So, like Hungary, Spain, Italy, and Norway. And medium influence, we have parts of Europe, and low influence, well, yeah. So year of establishment of integral yoga centers in the West. I have done this chart in order to show you all. So if you look at the bar charts, you can see that in 1960, in 1960 we have just 2 centers. Okay, 1950 to 1960 we have 2 centers, which is the Cultural Integration Fellowship USA, and the other one is Sri Aurobindo Center of Los Angeles. And then we have a spike in centers from 1970 to 80. Why is that? Because 1968, Auroville was set up by the mother. I mean, it was mother's brainchild. Auroville was set up. Auroville, as anyone knows anything about Auroville? Any idea? It's any idea? Have you heard of Auroville? Okay, okay, yes.
Totally heard. I have gone there, visited there.
Right, sir. So Auroville had come up in 1968, and it's considered as the, an experiment in human unity. You must be aware, if you've been there, that there are so many nationalities, including Tamils, staying there in a very amiable relation with the surrounding villages. So at that, since 68, Auroville was set up. So we had these people coming from, Western Europeans coming from their nation and residing in Auroville. But in 73, I guess, after the death of the mother, until 82, there was a lot of confusion regarding the status of Auroville, financial irregularities, and a lot of confusion. So during that time, until the government of India stepped in and took over the reins of Auroville, now government of India manages it, it's got representatives over there. So these people, they went back to their countries, and therefore you have an increase of centers from 1970 to 1980. You can see more or less most of the centers have started in 1970 to 80. These are all Aurovillians who went back to their countries, and they developed centers absolutely mirroring Auroville, where they could practice integral yoga and the Aurobindonian way of life.
Yes.
So that is the reason why we did this part. Okay, so integral yoga centers, as you can see, have labeled the centers, and the location of the centers are all here. Majority are there in North America. You have quite a few in Europe and Asia as well. So, dealing with objective 2, to examine the impact of Aurobindonian philosophy of integral yoga on the community life in Auroville, because since this, we have sustainability here, so sustainability and integral yoga, it goes hand in hand. I'll show you how. So, what is Auroville about? Auroville is a planned universal township for up to 50,000 people under development in Southeast India. It's still under development, it's developing, it's growing. It was planned for 50,000 people, located by the Coromandel Coast, about some 10 kilometers north of Puducherry. Aspects of Auroville can be found in other projects and communities around the world, but Auroville is the world's first and only internationally recognized experiment in human unity, also concerned with and practically researching into the future cultural, environmental, social, and spiritual needs of mankind. Now, Auroville's work is not confined only to meeting the needs of the township. It's a very big organization. It's got many offices where people, they are working on all sorts of sustainability, like ventures, afforestation. They're working on building earth blocks. They are working on educational institutions. They're working on every field, agriculture, every field. But its work is not only confined to meeting the needs of the township or to those of the wider bioregion. It sees itself as a place of research and experimentation for humanity as a whole, not only into sustainable practices like in the fields of agriculture, energy generation, etc., but more importantly into the establishment, for the first time on earth, an experiment of practical human unity applicable to all people and all nations based on the principles of integral yoga. So all nations, people from 42 countries are staying together in Auroville. 42 countries, okay, they're staying in Auroville, along with the Tamil villages which surround Auroville as such, which is 21 villages form a part of the Auroville bioregion. So they are living in perfect, cooperation with each other, perfect bond harmony. So this, and they are researching, or it's actually a practical, it's a place, it's a laboratory where integral yoga is carried out daily. So just giving an idea about the Oroville bioregion, you have, these are, 10 census villages and 21 villages, big and small, total within the Oroville bioregion. Bioregion is 25 square kilometers. You can see Matri Mandir, it's the, the rounded feature in the center. Matri Mandir is in the center, and 3 of them fall within Oroville site, and the rest outside it. Some villages belong to Puducherry and the rest to Tamil Nadu. The whole area had been certified as a backward area in need of development by the collector of South Arcot district. It was then South Arcot district in 1984. Okay. So what are the things, what are the ventures that these people do, Orovillians do, in the bioregion? Afforestation in a large way. We've planted 2 million trees. I'm going to show you later on. My slide has pictures of how Oroville was in 1968 and what it is now. You can see the pictures, comparison. Rural development by Oroville Village Action Group, focusing on social training programs, community organization, social economic empowerment of women, and the entire thing is given here: Oroville Health Clinic, Oroville Dental Center, Tsunami Relief and Rehabilitation Team. So they are working in every sphere possible. So what I did was that in the course of my research work, I had focused on, I wanted to find out what are the perceptions. Oroville has worked a lot and has uplifted the area because I had seen it. I had visited Oroville way back when I was in grade 11. I had seen it then. And then later on when I did my research, I also visited quite a few times. So I had seen the stark improvement in front of my eyes. Okay. So I just wanted to know perceptions. I decided to do a perception study to find out what the local people feel about Oroville. I can see that a lot of development has happened, but what do they feel? So after designing, what happened is that I focused on 2 villages. One is Kuilapalam village, as you can see in bright red, on the eastern part of the map, and then one on the western part, Irumbai. Now, why these 2 villages? Kuilapalam village is a general village. It's a general caste village or a Vaniyar village. That's what they call it. And Irumbai is a Dalit village. In Tamil Nadu, I had seen that Irumbai, they have villages, a general village, and then there's a road. And then separate from that village, there's another small village where the Dalit populations stay. So this is one of that, Irumbai Dalit village. So I had focused on Kuilapalam and Irumbai Dalit village. Kuilapalam is a revenue village outside Oroville master plan area, which has a population of 2870 people. And Irumbai Dalit village is located to the west of Oroville, and it's within the master plan area, Oroville master plan area. It has a population of 650 people. So the 2 villages are very different from each other as far as composition of population is concerned, social and economic characteristics. So for Oroville, a perception study was formulated for about 34 perceptions were taken into consideration, where I had taken tourism, agriculture, education, perception of people regarding infrastructure development, socio-cultural development, and a 5-point Likert scale was devised, and then this questionnaire was done. So I will not go into the details of how I did it, the statistical process, etc. The findings say that despite the difference in condition of both villages, villagers were simply emphatic in their appreciation of Oroville. They were emphatic. Oroville has been proactive in providing basic infrastructure to these villages in the form of schools, health centers with community health workers, toilets, kitchen gardens, night schools, women, self-help groups, etc. Installation of hand pumps had been carried out in most villages. Incidentally, it's interesting to note that I had seen, Orovillians first installed the hand pumps. Later on, the government came with the pipelines. In some, overhead tanks also have been built. Organic farm trial plots and afforestation programs have been carried out. And the villagers, with their cooperation, many Tamil villages have a separate Dalit colony and separated from the main village by the road. Oroville's Lajis has reached the Dalits and the general caste or the Vaniyars alike in equal measure. This attitude of Oroville has helped the Dalits to better their condition. Another of Oroville's effect is the development of tourism facilities. As a result of this recent development, some villages like Kuilapalam, Idayanchavadi and Kotakarai, to name a few, have had their social space converted from rural to semi-urban with shops, boutiques, banks and ATMs, open-air cafes, Mediterranean-style restaurants like that. Oroville has made a significant difference to this infertile, extremely backward region in providing for integral development. It can be classed as one of the Gandhian models for rural development, with the organization focusing on holistic development of the surrounding villages. In this respect, I'd like to mention another movement called the Sarvodaya Shramadan movement, a self-governance movement in Sri Lanka, which has, which I drew sort of parallels. It bears strong resemblance to Orville and provides a comprehensive development and conflict resolution programs in these villages, the Sarvodaya Shramadana movement. Another movement more closer home is the Amarkoti movement on the banks of the Kopai River in Birbhum. Though these movements have, the same socio-economic contribution to their communities also done by Auroville, yet Auroville is a movement with a difference. Why? Because Auroville is an organization with a spiritual goal set according to the philosophy of Sri Aurobindo and the Mother. It was founded to realize Sri Aurobindo's philosophy of integral yoga in daily life, to make possible the descent of divine consciousness in humanity, development, in humanity, make possible the descent of human life into humanity. Economic, social development, etc. came much later on to Aurovillians. It just developed because something had to be done. You cannot bring divine life down to earth only for the Western Aurovillians who settled there. You have to include the Tamilians and the villages surrounding you. Otherwise, integral yoga is incomplete. So I will just go on to a few more slides in order to just corroborate what I said. This is Auroville in 1970, and you can see the afforestation in progress. It was absolutely barren. This is Kuvilapalam village in 1970, and this is in 1990. A little bit of progress you can say, and this is in 2018. The progress is evident. The space is slowly changing from a rural to a semi-urban area. Providing employment, you can see banks, there are guest houses, people come and stay, they are part of internships run by Auroville-based institutions. They are, they run many volunteer programs. People go in for volunteer programs in agriculture and different other, they have a very innovative earth building, earth block, factory over there, where bricks are built, which is 85% earth and just the rest of it is cement. So, new creation school, these are all first generation learners, and Isiam Balam school. So these schools also are run by Auroville, and they are providing education to the people there. Women have been benefited definitely because Auroville employment, the business units of Auroville, they prefer women working in their units. They prefer that. So in conclusion, I can say that since its inception in 1968, Auroville, the International City for Human Unity, was based on the principles of Mother and Sri Aurobindo's integral yoga. It has constantly remained focused on the founder's ideals. With immense contribution in social and economic and environmental upliftment of the bioregion in general, Auroville has proved to be steadfast in its quest to be tuned with the nature of the divine and prepare for a divine life on earth. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Nandini Gangopadhyay ji. It is really a very informative presentation which you have made. And especially when we talk about the nation's role for shaping humanity, and when we talk about the institutions like Sri Aurobindo Ashram, Sri Aurobindo Society, and Auroville's exams you have given. I am basically associated with the Sri Aurobindo Society and working in the areas particular called Auro Bharti, which is basically to promote India's cultural traditions, India's spiritual gift to the world, Sri Aurobindo's message. In your presentation, you have mentioned in very clearly how the Sri Aurobindo Society ashram was created and what are the roles played by the ashrams and Sri Aurobindo's the vision for the better humanity. I'd say that true spirituality is not to renounce life, but to make life perfect, the divine perfection. So this is really unique, and the way you have collected the data, this is really it's a research work which is for the students and the people, those who take interest to know about the Sri Aurobindo ashrams. And when we talk about a sustainable future of humanity, that is a very unique goal for each and every human being, whether it is a individual life or an universal life, and it is based on the community, the influences. And you mentioned about the activities of Sri Aurobindo ashrams and societies. I know that Sri Aurobindo Society is also an international spiritual organization formed by the mother, and the branches we are working in several areas and just to manifest the ideas of mother and Sri Aurobindo. And when we talk about is the national and important international importance of Sri Aurobindo's integral yoga, it has its uniqueness because it speaks something different, how we can manifest life into a divine life on earth only. And the sustainable future, this is really one of the important targets of humanity. So this is really, I'm very much indeed to participate in this program. And now the floor is open. If the audience views, if someone wants to ask any question or views, please, it is open.
From the domain of geography, and in this particular conference actually the platform is more open for the from the faculties or students of philosophy, students of history, students of language, but this is an attempt of the geographers in this field from the perspective of a branch of geography that is not so popular, but it is called social and cultural geography. And this work, it is a PhD thesis under my supervision, that is working on the spatial aspects, the diffusion of culture or diffusion of a philosophy or diffusion of something, what is the impact. And we have participated this conference only due to this particular word, sustainable future. Sustainable future, if we can assure this sustainable future for the earth, it requires interdisciplinary research, and we the geographers can contribute in this field with our analysis as well as with our maps. You have shown some maps, and by this way we want to contribute in the field of social and cultural geography to the domain of anthropology, to the domain of sociology, and to the interdisciplinary platform to achieve the SDGs, that is Sustainable Development Goal. And this is our mission, and since this platform is new for us, but when we found that the vision and mission is to some extent similar, this is our humble attempt to take entry in this field. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
May I now request Dr. Anuradha Chaudhary ji. Dr. Anuradha Chaudhary is the coordinator of Indian Knowledge Systems Division of AICTE, Ministry of Education, Government of India, and Assistant Professor, Department of Humanities and Social Sciences, and member, the Rekhi Center for Excellence for the Science of Happiness, Indian Institute of Technology, Kharagpur. I know Dr. Anuradha Chaudhary is from 2008, and I am very happy that today we are meeting in a place, and she will speak on Rishi Aurobindo and his vision on resurgence of Asia. This is one of the important topics, and may I now request Dr. Anuradha Chaudhary ji to kindly deliver his presentation. Can you please start?
Hello, Namaste. I'm very sorry that I'm actually traveling, so the network is very poor. So I'm sorry for if it
No,
gets
no, it's okay.
disconnected.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'd just like to thank you. I'd like to thank Dr. Basu for this kind invitation, and I'll just try and do this in a this corporate style. You know, that executive presentations, and I'll try to really keep it brief, but try and maybe present a few points that I have understood of the topic that I'm going to present to you. So I basically wanted to just, because my topic is Sri Aurobindo on the resurgence of Asia and its importance in our society. What I would like to share is this: that I think it's important to understand the role of different countries in the larger context of the evolution of consciousness that Sri Aurobindo is presenting, where Sri Aurobindo talks about the evolution of nature itself. Like the human being's role is only one part of the evolution of consciousness that nature herself is undergoing, where she is trying to express herself through her manifested form. And it's in that context that as she has manifested herself in different, or rather reflecting different aspects of her properties, the different nations also become representatives of different characteristics of the movement of nature, the movement of consciousness. And it's in this context that uh, the role that Europe has to play, because Europe, the way it developed following the Greek traditions, the traditions of the mind-based traditions primarily, when the term suke was divided into, there was a part of the rationality, there was a part of the spirit and the soul, and there was a part of the appetites. And the part of the reason got more developed here because of the development of sciences, etc. So the mind became the most important instrument that dominates the societal approach towards existence itself. In Asia, however, because of the Indian influence and also because of the way of life, because of the influence of the Sanatana Dharma, and because of the influence of Buddhism across this entire region, introspection and deeper self knowledge became the larger norm of societal development. And therefore, what Sri Aurobindo is saying, and he's talking of this primarily in his five dreams at the time of independence, where he says the first one is about India getting her independence because of the message that she has to give to the world. But then the second part of his dream is saying, but Asia also needs to arise because of the fact of what Asia also has to offer as a collective, in consonance with the Indian vision of human unity based on a much deeper spiritual basis. And so while there is a concept of an expansion, this expansion of consciousness is more of a recognition of the underlying oneness of humanity based on spiritual basis. Different cultures, even in Europe, even in America, in all these different continents, there has been, it's not that this realization is exclusively an Asian monopoly. So this realization has been there in different aspects of the different cultures. But for Asia, this has been a dominant aspiration of the different drives of her life. So I had some quotations here where Sri Aurobindo is saying, in fact, he's saying, uh, he's very clearly talking about the Sanatana Dharma here, but I would also like to say that when Sri Aurobindo is talking of the Sanatana Dharma, it is not it is a very different
Yeah, it's not audible. To select the meeting. I think due to technical reasons, he'll left the meeting. He'll resume soon. So we will wait for some time.
I'm sorry, I lost
Yeah,
connection.
no, it's okay.
I
It's
lost.
no problem.
But I think I will also just maybe just summarize what I want to say, and in the concept of what Sri Aurobindo's light of the resurgence of Asia is basically this, that different cultures represent different aspirations of human consciousness, and it is India's quest for of self exploration and self discovery, self realization, which is based on a fundamental unity of all of mankind, which can be a very important voice in the when we are trying to bring about world unity. And because of the influence that India has had on the neighboring regions, it is only when the neighboring regions also live up to this internal aspiration for the human potential, for the discovery of the human potential and the underlying recognition of our human unity, that the world will move, because it's also a matter that what Dr. Nandini spoke before, of a place on earth that will incarnate a certain mass of human consciousness that is working on a certain basis, which will create the change in human consciousness world over. So Asia represents that potential as different nations with their own specific, unique attributes. But when these nations can come together and offer a basis, a foundations of human unity based on a much deeper ideal of our fundamental connectivity, that's when we will be able to uh, hope that the fourth and the fifth dreams of Sri Aurobindo, which is world unity, can be realized truly on Earth itself. So I will, as I said, this is executive summary of the original talk because of the circumstances that I'm in, but we just go with the flow. So I think that Sri Aurobindo has a tremendous message of hope for how the Asian nations need to collaborate and find their own true position in the world, in the discussions of the world when it is talking about global peace initiatives primarily. And it is only when India discovers herself, and there is a lot where he says that we have forgotten who we are. If I can manage to, if you give me the time, I'll just try and read this thing which I was very inspired to think. So where he says that he says that he says that the world spirit, he says that there are India has to. Wait, he says that the spirit of the nationalism which we profess and follow, we say to humanity, the time has come when you must take the great step and rise out of material existence into the higher, deeper, and wider life towards which humanity moves. The problems which have troubled mankind, can only be solved by conquering the kingdom within, not by harnessing the forces of nature to serve the comfort and luxury, but by mastering the forces of the intellect and the spirit, by vindicating the freedom of man within as well as without, and by conquering from within external nature. For that work, the resurgence of Asia is necessary. Therefore, Asia arises. For that work, the freedom and greatness of India is essential. Therefore, she claims her destined freedom and greatness. And it is to the interest of all humanity, not excluding England, that she should wholly establish her claim. And he adds that in order for India to become truly free, it is important that it is our dharma, this recognition that one, and he says that uh, we shall review European civilization entirely from the standpoint of Indian thought and knowledge, and seek to throw off from us the dominating stamp of the Occident. What we have to take from the West, we shall take as Indians. And the Dharma once discovered, we shall strive our utmost, not only to profess, but to live in our individual actions, in our social life, and our political endeavors. And his message to the youth at the end, where he says, you cannot cherish these ideals. Still less can you fulfill them if you subject your minds to European ideas or look at life from the material standpoint. Materially, you're nothing. Spiritually, you're everything. It is only the Indian who can first believe everything, dare everything, sacrifice everything. But for that, we have to first become Indians. We have to first recover that spirit. I'm paraphrasing Sri Aurobindo at this point, where he says it is only when we are able to discover our own strength that we will be able to make worthy contributions and the mastery of human. So I'll end here. He says the recover the source of all strength in yourself, and all else will be added to you. Social soundness, intellectual preeminence, political freedom, the mastery of human thought, the hegemony of the world. And it is this message that we are here to give as a nation that we can give to the world. And Asia will play her important role when India arises and shares that message with everybody. So thank you very much. And I'm very grateful again for this opportunity and for accommodating my presence and absence in between.
Thank you so much, Anuradha Chaudhary ji. It is, I can understand you are traveling and you spent your time with us. And it is very, indeed, a matter of pleasure to listen from you. When we talk about Sri Aurobindo's ideas on the resurgence of Asia, this is one of the important topics in terms of spirituality or culture or international relations. I very clearly mentioned like the different nations representing the movement of the nature. This is really the threefold nature, the relations between man, nature, and the universe. And as you mentioned that we have forgotten who we are in the development scenario. And if we study the Sri Aurobindo's contribution or his views on this Asia and how, and as you mentioned about his dream, but he says the another dream was for the resurgence and liberation of the peoples of Asia, and her return to her great role in the progress of human civilization. Where he says that India has a part to play and has begun to play it with an energy and ability which already indicate the measure for possibilities and the place she can take in the Council of the Nations. Sure, in those views, you have clearly mentioned this collective consciousness, how the human unity can be established. As the Vedas says, Yatra Vishwa Bhavati Eka Needam, the Upanishad famous dictum, Yatra Vishwa Bhavati Eka Rupam. These are the really our traditions, and these are the ethos and the values by which our human life was established. So this is really one of the important ideas which you said. And when we talk about the collective consciousness, it stands from the individual consciousness to the universal or the collective life. This is really the need of the art. Even in the society which we have seen how the drastic changes are going on. And we hope that spiritual foundations can build a better nation and better humanity on earth. And thank you so much for your presentation. Now, now the floor is open. If anyone wants to present any question or suggestions, please. Any questions or any observations from the audience, please? I think no question is there, so it is fully
Yes.
understood.
I hope I was cohesive, and thank you very much for very beautifully highlighting the important points of this discussion. Thank you very much for
Yeah,
that.
thank you so much.
Thank you.
So, Ajay, yeah.
Yes. Yes.
So if that can be done, then
Yes, sir. So thank you very much. If I may answer, thank you very much for the very important suggestion, which I think is something that we will have to gradually, collectively work towards. Because I think the reclaiming of the way we call ourselves, the way we perceive ourselves, because the word Bharata, one of the interpretations of that imply is the connection, or rather the land that is immersed in light. And I have been very coincidentally doing this exercise with a lot of groups that I've been interacting with, and I asked them the question. I said, if you say that I am a Bharatiya and I am an Indian, does it feel the same thing? And except for a very few people, most people say that when I say that I'm a Bharatiya, I have a greater connection with my cultural heritage, versus when I say I'm an Indian, which is a name that has been given to me by foreign countries. And therefore, this question of identity, because I think we have a schizophrenia of identity right now, and it's a very major problem which has infected our youth as well. I mean, our generations, because of the education system. Where Macaulay said that everything that has been taught in India is false. False science, false history, false religion, false everything. Everything that we were taught for the 5,000 years that we were on top of the GDP. We had 25% of the world's GDP for 2,000 years. And yet, when Macaulay came and swept it all under the carpet, he says everything has been false in this nation. And we have to look for English education and look to Europe for all our enlightenment. I think that was the beginning of our psychological downfall, a very conscious strategy to bring about our downfall. And I completely agree with your proposition that I think maybe we need not completely do away with the concept of India, because it has its own reality. So let's keep that. But if we have to choose between whether we want to refer to ourselves in, let's say, even in our documents like the passport, etc., we should have the option of saying I'm a Bharatiya as well, rather than just I'm an Indian. So I think that reconnection with the name that we called ourselves with, and the English language, fortunately, has given us an international reach to even communicate these ideas. So I think we can keep the English language, but I think we also need to put in a lot of emphasis on our Indian languages, and that is what we are doing in the NEP. So the NEP 2020 is really, I mean, they're trying very hard and there's a lot of collective effort at various levels, because I'm also part of the Indian Knowledge Systems division at Delhi with the Ministry of Education. So I can vouch for the fact that there are very genuine efforts with a lot of respect of all languages. There is no attempt to try and present one language over the other languages. There really is a very genuine effort to try and ensure that the regional languages also find their place in society, in the education system. And of course, Sanskrit is a mother language that ties in everything. The South Indian languages, there is Tamil. So we have our own languages that we need to fall back on. And of course, English language, I think we really also need to keep it with us, because it is the language that gives us international access, and we can establish ourselves with greater credibility and credentials if we have, not credentials, I would say, greater credibility in terms of expressing our ideas and having a reach. I will in no way say that our languages fall short in communicating what is the aspiration. In fact, the Indian languages capture much better the spirit of this nation, the civilization goals of this nation. So yes, Bharata, we need to bring it back, put it more in the center stage is what I would say. We can keep India, but yeah, I think we have to have an equal usage of that. So thank you very
Yeah,
much, sir,
thank you.
for that very important suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you for your letting answer and to the audience. And any other questions, please? Any views? I think it's no. So
Thank you very much.
I am very much thankful to you, Anurad Haji, and I'm very much thankful to the organizers, Ms. Kolkata.
Okay, that is perfect. Is it finished? I've again lost connection. Strangely, but yeah, because we are here. Yeah. We've reached, no? Nearly. Yeah, perfect. We've lost it.
Sir, you are visible, and can you make your concluding remarks?
Yeah. Yeah, so the connection was lost. Actually, it was indeed a matter of great pleasure to listen from the two of the speakers and pointing some of the important ideas on Sri Aurobindo's integral yoga and its national and international influence, and Sri Aurobindo's vision on the resurgence of Asia. When we talk about the Indic civilizations or the Asian civilizations, we can see that there is a great influence of Indian views on how to create a sustain a better humanity. And in your presentations, Dr. Nandini Gangopadhyay ji and Dr. Primanshu Chakrabarti ji, they have made a very case study and a very thorough study of the details of the activities undertaken by Sri Aurobindo Ashram, Sri Aurobindo Society, and Auroville Foundation. Then presentation, they have mentioned what are the vision, how to create their ideas of yoga and to create a better humanity on earth. And especially the second presenters, Dr. Anuradha Chaudhary ji, when she spoke about the resurgence of Asia, that is the true basis on the true foundation of spirituality. This is the need of the hour. So Sri Aurobindo's views was to create one world based on humanity, based on peace and sustainability. And when we speak about the sustainable development of human society, this is an important part. So as I'm associated with Sri Aurobindo Society, which is working in different sectors, starting from the education to health from sustainable development to rural development, including the cultures. We're in the process to find a specific emphasis how the culture can be part of the development of not only the national and international developments, and how the beautiful humanity can be established based on a divine consciousness. So this was really a matter of great pleasure to be here and to listen from the two of the speakers. And I'm thankful to the organizer of Kolkata Society for Asian Studies and Maulana Abul Kalam Azad Institute for Asian Studies and Anthropological Survey of India for organizing such a beautiful conference and giving me a chance to be part of this today's session. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. It was our great pleasure to have you with us and also to hear to the two speakers. So, hope to have you with us again later on sometimes in person, not on visual media, but in person. So, that's all. Thanks to Dr. Kishore Kumar Tripathi, Member Secretary of Auto Bharati. And now we may break for lunch because we all are hungry. Okay, sir. Thank you. Thank you very much.